Hey everybody, this is Devin Townsend, and you are watching Sonic Perspectives.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview of Sonic Perspectives. Today, we're going to geek out with Devin Townsend while we discuss his upcoming album, Power Nerd. Devin, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, we're keeping things in Canadian soil today. I'm in Toronto. I know you're living Coquitlam, and I have my Voivod shirt. So everything in the land of the North today.
That's great. I'm actually in Vancouver.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, and I don't have a Voivod shirt, but I probably have a Helix shirt somewhere, so
Oh,
we're good.
good stuff. Good stuff. To me, today was a choice between Voivod and Rush, which I always, juggle. But yeah, Voivod for today.
Nice work, man. Nice
Yeah,
work.
yeah. Well, let me start by asking you about the concept behind the term power nerd. In your own definition, it's somebody that has a tendency that society has deemed weak or not valuable, and you turn that into a personal power, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's a good overview of it, but I think it can
Mhm.
apply to almost any scenario. I think
Mhm.
you could even look at it as simply as people who do what they have to do when they don't want to do it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
fair enough.
like maybe you could look at the term power nerd as somebody who's still in bed and
Mm.
they realize it's garbage day and they hear the garbage truck coming and they dive out of bed and they bring the garbage out. Power nerd, man.
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think the definition could go in a bunch of different directions.
Yeah. To me, the duality in this concept also applies to your personality. I mean, you have such a calm demeanor, but your singing voice and your stage presence are absolutely killer. How do you develop that? I mean, I know you have kind of a shy personality, but on stage you're a completely different person.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an exaggerated version of the same person though, to be fair. It's
Mm,
it's it's not a it's not a like an act. I
mm,
feel that maybe Alice Cooper or somebody, it's when they wake up in the morning, they're, whatever his actual name is, and then when he goes on stage, he's a character.
yeah.
For me, it's never actually been that. It's more of a the music when I'm writing it and when I'm focused on it comes from a place that I think is very personal and as authentic as I can be.
Mhm.
And as a result of that, when you perform it, it can go as big as you want. You can expand that for how much room you've got on stage, and I still feel that it's reasonably authentic. So
Mhm.
I think that the contradiction between a calm demeanor and a powerful stage presence is more to do with the music itself than the person, perhaps.
Right, right. Fair enough. Well, and another duality in the album is that sometimes you want a beer, like on Knuckle Dragger, and sometimes you want coffee, like on Ruby Quaker, right? I'm not sure if there's a question there, but I mean, two different beverages on the album that I noticed.
Well, coffee for sure. I
Yeah.
think on Knuckle Dragger, the idea of the beer is is
Mm,
is not even necessarily about alcohol. I think
mm,
it's more about just trying to find an escape from some of the things in life and in society that just seem so unbelievably ridiculous. And
yeah.
to try and find a way to escape the stupidity of a lot of what we see. I think people look for a lot of ways to escape and just to get away from it. And I
Yeah.
think that's more what I'm referring to than an actual alcoholic beverage.
Fair
However,
enough.
however, uh, coffee, on the other hand, is an essential part of my working day.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And well, the contradiction here as well in the lyrics, I mean, they are dystopian and cynical at times, but I find them ultimately uplifting. I don't know if it's the chorus that's so grandiose on most of the songs, but yeah,
Sure.
it's an uplifting album, right?
Well, I mean, both of those things, the contradiction that you just expressed is was surprisingly the nature of this record because
Mm,
when I was first writing it, it was meant to be more like a simple, straight ahead sort of party record in a
mm,
way that starts off this four record project that I'm working on. It's like one of four.
Okay.
But during the making of it, things in my life and the life of my family got very confusing and very depressing.
Mm.
And the cynicism and the darkness that is the one side of that contradiction was to do with the fact that while writing this record and recording this record, it was one of the most depressing times that I've ever been through. And
Oh, wow.
same with the family, just the amount of grief that we felt was just very difficult to work through. But at the same time, I recognized many years ago that I have a certain amount of agency over what it is that I want the music to represent for people.
Hmm.
And so the choice to have it uplifting was conscious. I wanted to not wallow in the depression, but more acknowledge it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Well, and speaking of one song in particular, Gratitude, the anthemic quality of that chorus, I can definitely see, I could see that being played in a stadium, maybe
Yeah,
in an alternative universe, right?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about the work that I do, I feel, is
Mm.
that I have no burning desire for fame,
Mm.
uh, and no real need on some level to be incredibly successful. But what is important to me is being successful enough that I can keep working, and that's what I do, and it's perfect.
Hmm.
And with that, though, I write things often that are, catchy. Whether or not going back to Ocean Machine, like the song "Life," that was,
Yeah.
my second record. It's pop song here and there, and stagnant Ontario, and it's part of my DNA. It must have been "Hysteria" by Def Leppard. So
Yeah.
those ideas come to me, and I've often heard from people, oh, this could be like a radio song,
Yeah.
like you say, in an alternate universe.
Yeah.
And perhaps it could be, but I certainly don't write it from that frame of mind. I write that type of music occasionally just because it's, I hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think you mentioned in other interviews like that you were disappointed with the music business and maybe the LA scene early on in your career.
Yeah,
Is it hard to navigate those circles? I mean, everyone's like constantly on display, selling yourself, selling your business and whatnot, being
yeah,
cynical many times, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, business in general and music industry is just so, it's like many industries, but maybe even more so, music industry is run by people who are well, it's an industry of kids, and so
Also,
and so I think a lot of the interactions that we all have with each other, and I include myself with that. I'm
Mm.
I'm young too in that way, but a lot of the interactions that we have with each other are complicated, and the cynicism is easy to internalize. Like I think it's very easy, specifically if you're an independent musician, and specifically if you're doing things yourself and all this, it's easy to become cynical when you have to deal with things that seem childish or seem
Yeah.
illogical. And the trick, I think, is not letting that cynicism define your work. And in order to do that, I think you just have to take a deep breath all the time. And I've been taking deep breaths since I was 19, living in LA. And if there's anything I'm proud of with my career is I think I haven't been broken yet.
Yeah, of course, that's something to be proud of. Yeah,
Yeah.
in that industry for sure. I mean, I'm in on the fringe of that industry, and I can tell for
Oh
sure.
yeah, man. Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
I think it's easy to let it break you because it's
Mm.
most of the interactions that we have are virtual, and it's easy to misinterpret these things. But I think at the end of the day, part of my work includes not allowing the cynicism of it all to define my music.
Mhm. Understood. Yeah. And well, back to the album, it was recorded in 11, not recorded, but it was written in 11 days. right? Was that
Uh,
part of like a bet or a personal challenge that you imposed to yourself, or?
yeah, yeah, it's a bet I lost.
Okay.
No, it's to be clear, I assembled the record in 11 days, so a lot of the
Mm.
writing had happened before that.
Okay, fair enough.
And but still, that's probably half of the time that I've done it in the past.
Hmm.
So it was still a very short amount of time, and I chose for it to be short because the nature of the music seemed to be it would seem to benefit from a sort of urgency,
Hmm.
and by establishing parameters that I have to work within, so there's not options to go further, whatever the case may be, it eliminates those decisions. And my hope was that by making those parameters, it would add urgency to the music, and it would also provide an angle for me to work within on this record that was novel.
Hmm.
You know, it's
Yeah.
been so many records that I have done that each time I make a record now, I'm looking for something that provides an angle for inspiration. You know, on light work, I used a producer, and Epic Cloud, I had a gospel choir. Deconstruction, we had an orchestra.
Right.
Whatever it is, there's an angle that I find inspiring, and the parameters of time for Power Nerd was the angle I chose for this record.
Right, right. Well, my go-to album in your discography is Empath. It has
Mm.
been like that for a number of years, and compared to that, it's like water and wine because Power Nerd is a lot more immediate. Well, with Empath, it takes time, it takes multiple listens until you get used to it. I don't know if you agree with that, but
Oh, of course,
yeah,
yeah. I think that the nature of the work, though, is that when I do one thing, the next thing that I do is often going
the
to be the
opposite.
opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a real practical reason for that. It's just the amount of effort that I put into each record means that by the time I've delivered it, I'm sick of it, and so the
Mhm.
next record is going to be often just like just for the sake of relief, it's going to be different, right?
Right.
I think the main reason why Power Nerd is as straight ahead as it is that it's part of a four record project. So it's Power Nerd, The Moth, a record called Axolotl,
Mm.
and a record called probably Ruby Quaker or Dream Piece. I don't know the name yet,
Okay.
but very similar to what I had done in 2010, where I had four different records that described the changes I was going through at that point with having kids. Um,
Hmm.
it's similar to that now, where I've got these four records. One of them's complicated, one of them's quiet, one of them's abstract, and one of them's straight ahead. And this is the first of those four, and it's the straight ahead one.
Right.
My hope is that uh, it will help it'll help some of the more casual listeners tolerate the strangeness of the next three records.
Right. Right. Looking forward to that. And I read somewhere that the Moth is already ready for release next year. Is that the case? Are all four already done or?
No,
Uh,
no, they're I say they'll be ready for release though.
okay.
And a lot of times I impose deadlines on my work in the same way that I impose the parameters on Power Nerd. By
Mm.
giving myself a deadline, it means that I can eliminate some of the other options, like the option to just remix it over and over, or like rewrite it, or it's like it's very
Right.
easy to let your insecurities drive your creative process. And by
Hmm.
doing so, you never release anything because you're afraid of being judged.
Yeah.
It could be, I don't want to put it out because people are going to judge it compared to the last record, or people are going to judge it with the mix or the mastering or any of these things. And I
Mm.
know people in my life, musicians in my life, that can't seem to put a record out because
Yeah.
they're afraid of the criticism. And I feel that one of the main hurdles to get over, specifically as an independent musician, somebody who does a lot of the work himself. I do the recording and the mixing and the editing and playing the instruments and making the videos. Like, I mean, I do it all, really.
Hmm.
Of course with help, but the lion's share of it is me. The main thing to do in order to facilitate that is to get past that sense of fear of criticism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you'll just never put anything out. It's very easy to
Yeah.
just procrastinate if you're afraid of being criticized.
Yeah. It's the Sergeant Pepper syndrome where you adding stuff, adding more instruments and adding more special guests and whatnot, and it never gets to the finish line, I guess, right?
Well,
Sometimes,
Sergeant Pepper
sometimes.
did though. Yeah, yeah. Sergeant Pepper did get to the finish line. I
Yeah.
never I never heard the story. Was it a scenario where it got delayed as a result of their
Uh,
process?
I don't know. I guess it was the grandiose stage of the Beatles where everyone had ideas, all four guys firing on all cylinders, and they all
Sure.
had ideas and guests that they wanted on the album. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that there's room for that too, you know.
Mm,
I think that it's 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 less about preventing the grandiose statements from occurring.
right.
I think it's more about preventing your own insecurities from having faith in what comes naturally to you.
Hmm.
So if you're doing something based on your intuition of this is right for me at this point in my life, the music that's coming out of me right now, strange as it may be, simple as it may be, complicated, whatever its definition is, uh, it's appropriate for the experiences that I've gone through in the past year or two.
Hmm.
So part of the leap of faith that I think independent artists have to take is to recognize that if it's coming out of you with authenticity and it's not what you expect and it's not what fits into your work that you've done in the past, but you know it's correct for you, the leap of faith is just doing it anyway, and that's a big one to take, and a lot of people struggle with that, I would feel.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm always curious about, talking about your producer hat on this thing. The
Sure.
album is so varied. There's a song like Glacier, which is heavy and powerful. Power Nerd itself, it's like almost a Motorhead riff.
It is Motorhead,
Well,
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And Goodbye is like pure 80s hard rock.
Yep, true.
How do you make sure that they feel like they're part of the same release of the same album? Because they do feel like they belong on the same album, right?
Yeah, I think it helps to do them all in one session for one
Mm,
thing. I think you can get away with a lot of variation if the instrumentation is consistent sounding from song to song.
mm,
Like if the drums have a similar attack and the guitars have a similar EQ, I think that helps smooth over some of the rough edges.
right.
But I also feel that on a real practical level, if it was written during a similar period of time, there's just a commonality to the intention that connects the work. And I think that it's easy to underestimate how much the audience picks up on that.
Hmm.
And I think it's really as simple as that. I think if the theme is consistent through the songs, and if the sonics are similar from song to song, then I think you can get away with a lot of dynamicism, and I actually think it's a benefit to a record like this.
Yeah, for sure. And you have a few guests playing with you on the album, but I have to ask about Diego Tejeda or Tejeda from
Yeah,
Temek Haken. What was it
yeah.
like to work with him, and how did you guys get connected?
Well, he was in the Empath band. So when
Oh,
we,
okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
when we
forgot about that.
toured, yeah, when we toured, Diego was a keyboard player, and we kept in touch, of course, during the pandemic, and he played on the puzzle as well. And he's just an exceptionally talented keyboard player, and we get along. So
Mhm.
when it came time to do this, he actually wrote me and said that if I was looking for some keyboards, he'd be willing to help out. And so I took him up on it,
Mhm.
and and yeah, I've always got time for Diego. He's a fantastic talent.
Awesome. Well, and speaking of a side gig, you also have your own YouTube channel where you interview some of your peers.
Sure.
A lot of these guys I also spoke with, Joe Satriani, Jordan Rudess, etc. But with you being in the industry and having toured with most of them, it makes for a much more informed and informative chat, right?
Hmm.
What made you decide to start your own channel?
Well, I got asked.
Yeah. Okay, fair
I got
enough.
asked by Inside Out Records
Okay.
if I would do it, and uh, and it seemed like it was a scenario that would benefit us both,
Uh-huh.
and so I chose to do it. and it's it's fun. My my problem within the industry, I think, is that because I perhaps don't feel similarly about fame
Mm.
as some people and some of my colleagues even, my perception of other people's work and their fame, etc., is much more based on whether or not I can talk to them as human beings.
Hmm.
And then my tendency to value the relationship that I have with them is contingent on that, much more so than their success or their skill set.
Yeah.
So maybe the informal aspect of it uh, has something to do with the fact that I'm not particularly interested in success.
Hmm.
So it doesn't play into my questions. But I guess at the same time, these are people that I know for the most
Yeah.
part. So there's a certain amount of that. But I feel that, I would talk the same to you as I would talk to anybody.
Yeah.
So so it's a question that I don't know if I have a real answer for.
No, but that does the personal aspect of it does come across in your chats
Hmm.
in the videos that you make. So
Yeah.
it's awesome. I watched a
Thank
few
you.
to
Thank
prepare.
you.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. And well, I interviewed Terry Bozzio a few years ago and asked him about recording Sex and Religion with you and Steve Vai. He mentioned he was
Yeah.
really frustrated with the process. What was your recollection of that time with Steve and particularly Sex and Religion?
It was frustrating.
Hmm.
And, and Terry and I never really saw eye to eye on anything. I
Mm.
don't think. I don't think we said more than 10 words to each other, really.
Oh wow.
Um, but uh, it was frustrating to a degree, but also a great learning experience. And the truth of the matter is, I'm extremely close with Steve,
Mhm.
and he was here staying with me and working with me on the Moth and lots of things recently. But Terry, I've never spoke to him since. So,
Oh wow.
my perspective on that is much more, yes, it was difficult,
Mhm.
but my relationship with Steve was different than Terry's relationship with Steve. And um and our personalities were different. So it was frustrating, but probably for different reasons, I would say.
Fair enough. Yeah. It
Yeah.
didn't come across when he said it to me that it was a personal thing. It was more like the intention of the band was for everyone to collaborate, but he didn't feel
Yeah,
like it was that way in the recording process.
that's
So
true. Yeah,
yeah,
that's true. That's
yeah,
true. And I could see that being as frustrating for him as it was for TM and maybe me on some level. Although I was young, right? So
yeah.
it was less that I came into that scenario thinking I deserved that voice, but
Hmm.
more so it was just, I was so overwhelmed with the whole experience that most of my energies were going into just trying to process it, right?
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. And well, I can't not ask you about the Dream Sonic tour, which you did with Dream Theater and Animals as Leaders. I think it was last year that it ended. What was that experience like?
Brilliant
Uh-huh.
and uh, comfortable
Mhm.
and um, uh, easy.
Uh-huh.
It was a great group of people. Uh, I was I never not that I wasn't a fan. I just never listened to Dream Theater. I just it wasn't it never found its way into my life really.
Mhm.
So I wasn't too familiar with the band, but of course I know of them and I know of their success. And I've met some of the people prior to the tours.
Mhm.
But I guess I went into it thinking that they were going to be arrogant, like they were going to be difficult people. And the opposite was the case. They were really
Mhm.
wonderful people, and they were really well-spoken, intelligent, casual, and good people to spend time with. And animals as leaders, I've toured with on several occasions, and I've known Tosin since he was in Reflux. And so I love those guys, right? I love
Yeah.
Javier and Tosin's brilliant. I love his company. So the combination of it all it was a nice tour, man.
Yeah.
And I did two long tours with Dream Theater. And the first one was just myself and Dream Theater, and that was even easier.
Right, right. And well, I spoke with Mike Mangini right after the last show of that tour. And what's crazy is that we're doing an interview to promote his solo album. But
Sure.
like days after that, he left the band and Mike Portnoy came back.
Yeah.
Was there any indication during that tour of, something brewing that this would
Oh
happen
yeah.
or
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah, but it's not for me really to talk
Oh,
about, but it was definitely brewing for sure.
oh my God.
But I mean it's not only it
Hmm,
wasn't brewing in the sense of like they were angry at each other.
okay.
It just seemed like they were separate from each other,
Oh,
you know? And there was nobody that was talking to me
mm,
about any nefarious plans, and no one was talking to each other behind their back. But as an observer,
hmm.
you watch the dynamic between people, and Mike was usually not, he was usually on his own,
Okay.
and I remember thinking that seemed like there may have been some discontent between them. But what that discontent was, I mean, I don't know. I don't
Fair
know.
enough.
But I could see that they were separate
Fair
towards the
enough.
end of the tour. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, last question is, are you planning any tour or any dates to promote Power Nerd or?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
trying to find a balance right now though between my life and touring because now that I'm in my 50s and
Mm-hmm.
now that a lot of things in my personal life, whether or not it's with parents or kids or whatever dogs require me to be present and to take care of things. I'm currently just finding the right balance, and that's actually not easy. It's because people have a vested interest in you touring.
Yeah.
You've got agents and crew and band and management and merch company, and it's like as soon as you go on tour, everybody gets percentage. So
Yeah.
everybody wants you to be on tour. Like
Yeah.
that's part of it. And nowadays,
It's where the
being
money
on
is, right?
tour,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, but at the end of the day, with that, man, it's like I've toured so much in the past to try to appease all of those things and make money for myself. But it's psychologically really difficult to be away for 2 months, 3 months,
Yeah.
and as a singer, the work that I do is very intensive. Like what the vocal style that I have requires a lot of focus.
That
And
fry thing that you do. Yeah.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like
Stuff.
after 4 weeks, you can start sounding like Marge Simpson, and
Right.
that doesn't benefit anybody, right?
Understood. Yeah. Well, so we're reaching the end, but I'll keep my fingers crossed that you make it to Toronto and I get to see you live here.
Certainly,
Yeah. Yeah.
certainly, brother. And thank
Right.
you so much for the interview, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Awesome. Thanks,
See you
Devin.
soon.
Have a good one.
Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.